Good morning, everyone. I have an exaggerated belief that I'm much taller than I actually am, and so I was actually gonna stand over here because I was convinced no one would be able to see the screen
just to get it out of
if I stood in front of it, but then I was just reminded that I'm actually not that tall. So here we are. Good morning, everyone. My name's David Bator, and I work for Achievers. Achievers is a recognition and reward software company. And what our software does is connect people to their purpose through frequent recognition within their flow of work. And what our customers have come to enjoy is the ability to inspire action with their workforce, to align their culture, and also to really shape the behaviors that drive the performance of their business. I want to tell a quick story about my good friend, Jose. Achievers has its own annual customer conference. And 2 years ago, we were in Austin, Texas, and I was sitting next to Jose, who's the executive director of Cineplex, which is a chain of movie theaters. And I asked him how long he had been at Cineplex, and he told me 22 years. And I asked him how many jobs he'd had in 22 years, and he said he'd had 10. And I asked him what his first job was, and he said scooping popcorn. And I asked him what his second job was, and he said teaching people how to scoop popcorn. And so I asked him, what was it that had prepared him to be able to teach people how to scoop popcorn? Had he gone to a popcorn college? And in fact, that was not the case. He said what he felt was true was that he possessed some skills. He was open-minded. He had a collaborative mindset. He was a problem solver. He was empathetic. And he felt that it was not just the fact that he had those skills, but that the organization had a way of seeing and valuing and appreciating those skills. And it was the combination of those two things that had allowed him to shape his story and for the organization to do that for scores of employees over the years that followed. And it occurs to me that that's really what we do in the people function. Our role is really to create conditions so that people can do the best work of their lives. And I share this distinction here often because I think it's an important one. In my experience, the terms employee engagement and employee experience are often used interchangeably, even though they have very different meanings. And so for clarity today, when I refer to employee engagement, what I'm really talking about is the commitment an individual employee makes to doing the job that they're paid to do. And by contrast, when I'm talking about the employee experience, I'm talking about the responsibility that we all share to create conditions so that employees can be engaged in the first place, to really shape someone's experience at work. I thought I would share some recent insights from the Workforce Institute that I lead. We are a team of workforce researchers and data scientists, and our focus is really in interrogating those conditions through our global primary research studies. And what the current state of the employee experience looks like is it's a little bit doomy and gloomy. Employees are disengaged at work. Nearly half say they are at least somewhat burned out. Just 34% say that they would recommend their manager, and whether or not you accept the wisdom that people quit their boss rather than their company, this should jump off the page to you. And just 20% of employees say that they feel meaningfully recognized at work. So a little doomy and gloomy if you look at any one of the data points in isolation, certainly challenging for all of us as we look at them together. But I have great optimism for the moment we're in because, again, there is great evidence about what conditions need to exist at work so that employees can really shape their future at your organizations. And I'm gonna touch on 4 of them today. I love alliterations, so these are all C words. The first of these is connection. It has been convenient to believe over the last number of years that we just sort of all of a sudden became disconnected as we adjusted to new modes of working, a global pandemic, and so on. But the truth is, our organizations have always been disconnected. If your organization is of a certain size, it's impossible to get all the resources you need under one roof to run your business. We've been separated by time zones and geographies and business units and brands. What is true, however, over the last number of years is we've really seen the introduction of a rash of tools that promise to connect us better than ever. And yet when we ask employees, how well are we doing on that score? Just 15% of employees say their organization is doing a good job connecting them to their colleagues. And so what I challenge to all of you is that connection is not about a series of features that you can flip on or off. It is more about a philosophy. The philosophical question is, are we making it easy as leaders so that our people can access the people, the skills, the resources they need every single day so they can be productive and positive from anywhere? What our research shows is that when organizations invest in these sorts of conditions, when they make this part easy, employees are more than twice as likely to feel that they belong at work. Why else does connection matter? Well, we are currently in a time of great uncertainty. Rachel spoke about it this morning, geopolitically, economically. And when we ask employees, how capable do you feel of meeting unexpected challenges, of dealing with uncertainty? Less than a third, only 28%, say that they feel capable in this way. Now, personally to me, this was surprising. When I think, again, about the rear view of the last 4 or 5 years, and I think about those same factors of new modes of working, a global pandemic, social justice issues, mental health conversations coming to the fore as never before, to me, that's a period where employees have demonstrated that they can survive and thrive through anything. But then when we remember, as a species, people tend not to love change, this is less surprising. What our research shows is that connection is all over the confidence an individual has to survive and thrive through anything. And in particular, it's the connection they have to the mission of their organization, it's the connection they have to their manager, and it's the connection that they have to their peers. We've been doing quite a bit of research into the foundations of manager effectiveness, and our study reveals that for managers, there are 4 things that we need to pay attention to. First of all is frequent contact. If you do nothing else, make sure that you don't give up your one-on-ones. The cadence of these may vary. What's on the agenda may vary, but a consistent, accountable approach to contact in this way is the most important factor in terms of manager effectiveness. The second is frequent recognition. And to be clear, this is not about a parade of thank yous and attaboys, even though that does feel good over time. What we mean here is frequent and meaningful recognition. Put another way, recognition that is specific, that is personal, and that is impact-oriented. Coaching and career development round out the other 4 factors. And what we see through our research is that when employees are engaged with managers in this way, they are much more likely to recommend their manager, and they're much more likely to be productive, engaged, and so on. The other relationship driver that we touched on when we talked about connection and its connection to resilience is the relationship that I have with my peers. And in fact, the more frequently someone is recognized, the stronger their connection with their colleagues. The other opportunity that we all have when it comes to connection, this first of 4 C words, is connecting our people programs. It's been my observation that while well-intentioned, so many of the things we make for our people, we do so in silos. And there's a great opportunity and great research to connect our people programs through recognition. I can't think of another technology that touches every part of the employee experience the way recognition does. And I can't think of another technology, in fact, that every employee, whether they are in the field or on the plant floor or at your front desk, that also employees would have access to. A quick story, we did a study that looked at what happened when organizations were connecting their recognition program to their DE&I program. And what we found was that employees who worked for those organizations were 3 times as engaged. And so whether you take connecting recognition to customer satisfaction or learning and development, there are scores of examples of why this type of connection is so important. The second C word that I wanted to talk about is celebration. And this is sort of a catch-all for recognition, award, reward. And the truth is that being recognized as human beings makes us feel good. And while great feelings feel great and it's nice to be nice, as my mother-in-law says. The truth is, warm fuzzies don't get funded. So here are some of the facts about what frequent recognition delivers. When someone is frequently recognized, they're more than twice as likely to feel physically and mentally well at work. When someone is frequently recognized, they're more than 3 times as likely to be engaged. They're 5 times more likely to feel that they belong. And thinking about that very scary stat about just 34% of employees wanting to recommend their manager, they are 10 times more likely to recommend their manager when they are frequently recognized. But recognition is also a protective factor. When someone is recognized at least monthly, they are less likely to job hunt, they are much more likely to be productive, and they feel better about a salary that may objectively be below industry standards. Now, how many of you, just a quick show of hands, have an annual awards program? Just a handful. This has been a hot topic for many of our customers, and we went out and asked employees what they thought about annual awards programs, and the overall sentiment is, it's better than nothing, but it's worse than average. Most employees, as you can see here, half of employees have an annual award with a prize that they value, but 71% of employees say that it's the same people that win every single year. So we similarly asked employees, well, what do you want instead? And this was the number one answer. I want to be consistently receiving at least monthly recognition for the impact that I'm having in my role. What we also see, and this connects very directly to this idea of shaping our workforce, we say in our own organization, what gets recognized gets repeated. And the data shows this to be true as well. 74% of your employees will repeat an action if they are recognized for it. And so if you are still one of those organizations trying to instill and demonstrate what diverse, equitable, and inclusive exchanges and experiences look like for your people, recognize them for it. If you're trying to demonstrate what safety looks like in action, how it's not just the domain of people who are on the plant floor, but that it's a shared value for everyone, recognize people for it. If you're trying to explain to people what great customer service looks like in action, again, recognize people for it, because what gets recognized gets repeated. The third C word that I wanted to talk about is compensation. We did a survey, I want to say about a year ago, that asked employees, I think, a provocative question. And the question was, which job would you prefer? Would you prefer a job where every single day you felt seen, valued, and appreciated? Or would you prefer a job that paid you 30% more, but those feelings were absent? 75% of employees picked the former. And I think that's very, very interesting, because what it shows is that while we would likely all take a pay raise and promotion today, if it was offered to us today, that's not the tie that binds us to our organization. It's not the thing that helps us, as my colleague Bree Harvey says, get over the Sunday scaries. We show up to work for something bigger. We also asked employees about frequency of recognition and how fairly they felt paid. And I think it's interesting that just over half, 53% of employees said they felt fairly compensated in their current role, but that number jumped to 73% and 70% respectively when someone was frequently recognized, so at least monthly for the work that they were doing, and 70% when they felt that they belonged at work. And belonging, which is something that we've been studying for a number of years, is really how we should be thinking about compensation, creating conditions for people so that they are welcomed, that they are included, they are known as the individual they are, they feel supported, they feel connected. When we use these as the building blocks for everything we do, for our people, for all the programs that we invest in, it has an outsized impact on the things that we are doing for our organization. It's also interesting to know that 72% of employees say being paid market value and being celebrated frequently would strengthen their sense of belonging. And what's also interesting, I think, if we look at this table, recognition outweighs salary as a driver of key outcomes. So whether you're thinking about engagement or the extent to which you would recommend this as a great place to work, or the extent to which you're going to look for a job somewhere else. Investing in what we call someone's emotional salary, not just thinking about pay raises, promotions, and total comp, but broadening the view to create human conditions is a very, very worthy investment. The last C word that I'll talk about today is choice. And I heard Rachel and Steve talk about this this morning, that there's really, with all the investments that we make for our people, so many of them we make with a supply side focus, but the trick is meeting people in the moments that matter to them. And sometimes these things can be episodic. What I think, and what the research shows, is that all the organizations that are on the list of great companies that are written about in Forbes and Inc. and Fortune and all the business magazines, they create conditions for inclusion, and they also create conditions for another I word, which is involvement. People want opportunities to not only wave your flag, but to get a great idea heard by the right person in the organization, to share and declare their opinions. And what our research shows is that organizations are simply not doing a good enough job of this. Just 52% of companies are even asking their employees annually about what they think about work and about culture. And yet, what our research also shows is that when we ask employees for this type of feedback at least 4 times a year, employees are 50% more engaged, 88% more likely to feel valued. So the call to action here is to not do more engagement surveys, even though I really believe that engagement surveys continue to have utility for inspecting the conditions that we create for our people. But it's to think about, the processes, the policies, the products that you're trying to bring to market, and where are there natural opportunities to give folks a chance to raise their hand and say, here's what I think about that. I'll give you a couple of quick stories. The first is an oldie but a goodie, and it's from a big box retailer that you would all know. They're not actually called big box. In any event, this organization was facing some pretty significant economic headwinds, and one of the things they thought about doing to cut costs was they were going to eliminate their employee discount. And just before they did this, they thought, maybe we should check in with our employees here and see what they think about that. Can anyone guess what employees thought about that decision? So through this survey, which also allowed for verbatim feedback, the feedback came back and employees overwhelmingly said, this sucks, we hate this. But as is often the case, the real nuggets lay in the verbatim feedback. And what employees said is that they acknowledged that the discount was an undeniable perk of working at the big box, but that they used that discount so they could buy product from the store, so they could be more informed in their conversations with customers who came into the store every single day. And so that feedback was packaged and sent back up to wherever decisions are made, and that decision was reversed. Oh, yeah. That's an example of giving people choice and an opportunity to declare their opinions. The second story comes from the continued investment in well-being. And it's hard to know these days who to believe when it comes to the outcomes associated with well-being investments. But my friends at Gartner have been doing some excellent research under the leadership of Mark Whittle, and he points out 3 things. First of all, that their research shows that investments in well-being programs does deliver outcomes for the organization and for the individuals affected. Secondly, most organizations, by their math, have invested in some way in a well-being of some kind. And yet, enrollment in these programs hovers between 21 and 26%. And Mark sort of wondered aloud through his research, what gives? Why is this? And his theory, which I'm happy to share with you today, is that, again, so many of the things we build for our people, we build with a supply side focus, meaning here's all the stuff that's available, rather than a demand side focus that meets employees in the moments that matter to them. And the only way you can do that is by asking employees, to a person, what does work need to look like so that it works for you? And this is important because this is the moment we're in, pardon me. We are leaving an era of one-size-fits-all programs for an era of hyper-personalization. And this is an expectation that your employees have, that they will have a say in determining what work needs to look like so that it works for them. So those are my four C words. And to put a bow on it, if I might, and I think back to the example of Jose and his opportunity to shape his future. It had everything to do with the organization creating conditions so that future could be shaped in the first place. And so in your toolbox, as you think about the employee experience and the conditions you need to create, I would be thinking about making sure that people were connected to the people, resources, and skills they need to be productive. I would be thinking about celebrating the wins, big and small, that drive performance for individuals and for your organization. I would be thinking about investing in someone's emotional salary beyond the opportunity of a pay raise, and would also, where I can, be introducing ways to invite choice into that experience. So you're creating experiences that are rewarding for individuals and for your organization. There's a big picture of my head. I write an article every single day on LinkedIn. If you'd like to connect with me there, I also have a column on Forbes. I'd love to hear from you about the things that we're getting right, that we're getting wrong, and Achievers are the handsome gang over there in the purple jackets if you'd like to talk to us later. Thanks so much.